A great deal of discussion of the weather this week in Otago and Southland, very much in the news. Drought officially declared there right now. I think the temperatures are about 32 degrees in Dunedin, 33 degrees north of Dunedin, Oamaru, North Otago. But rain, as John was just saying, is on the way. Heavy rain warnings have been issued for some areas. More on what heavy rain on hard, dry ground actually means coming up. But research by NIWA and work we've already discussed with Dr. Judy Lawrence from Victoria University a couple of nights ago tells us droughts won't just become more common, they'll spread in their areas of impact. Now, Dr. Andrew Taite is a principal scientist with the National Climate Centre at NIWA, and he told me he's been most surprised this summer by a couple of things: how early in the season it stopped raining and how dry it's been along much of the country's west coast.
We've seen a remarkable for how early it has been in the year and the season, really. Drying out of some parts of the country, in particular up the sort of Kapiti coast, Paraparaumu, up through Whanganui, and even right over to Taranaki, through Taranaki. That dried out very quickly, sort of November, December period, which is way earlier than what it typically would do if it gets dry at all in those locations. And also, quite surprisingly, at the same time, it was getting dry around Westport and Buller. Now, it's all a relative thing, of course. The West Coast is known for being
wet,
a relatively wet area. But when it's drier than normal, it certainly still impacts them just as much as it would impact another area of the country that is traditionally more dry.
Dr. Taite, your research papers suggest that tradition doesn't count, that it's change we're dealing with. Now, every time we talk about droughts, we get texts and emails from people saying, well, we've had droughts before, and that's true, but it's location and frequency that will be different?
I think what we need to do is appreciate that drought has always been in the sort of the New Zealand environment. What I think we'll have to do better in the future is be able to deal with these conditions more often than what we've seen in the past. So the ability to adapt our systems, our agricultural systems and horticultural systems, to manage dry conditions more frequently, rather than maybe a 1 in 10 year sort of drought, which is really impacts the business, but we're able to get over that and continue on. These types of events might happen, once in 5 years or even once every 3 years. So it's a matter of, can a business agricultural system or a horticultural system, or even viticulture, for example, can it still be profitable and sustainable as these types of events become more frequent?
Right, and after droughts, if we get heavy rain, as is forecast for some areas over the next few days, the very dry, hard soil can't absorb that water, right? So, trouble.
Yeah, that's a real problem. In some places, the ground is like concrete, and so you can just imagine getting a heavy rainfall on a concreted surface, and it runs off very quickly. It's very similar when the ground is that hard and dry. So when you get these very intense systems, just exactly as you say, that isn't actually all that beneficial for alleviating a drought. You will have obviously some of that rainfall seep into the soil, particularly after the rains have gone through, and there'll be puddles around, and eventually that will seep in, or most of it. Some will evaporate. But you're right. When you have a hard soil associated with it, particularly dry conditions, a lot of that rain will actually run straight off, and that actually can cause problems in itself, with erosion and loss of topsoil, and also some flooding.
It does seem extraordinary, doesn't it, that we may potentially in some parts of the country be going from a heat wave to flooding. We will keep an eye on the weather, of course. That's Dr. Andrew Taite, Principal Scientist with the National Climate Centre at NIWA.